space to exchange experience, which is something absolutely important in our community. We are going to have many presentations today. We are going to hear what has happened with IX. We've got almost 20 terabits on a monthly basis. We really want to celebrate that 20 terabit per second. It's almost there yet, almost there. There's still a little bit missing. Julio will tell us what's going on and tell us about IX here in Brazil. There are many tools you are going to hear about, which are useful tools for providers so that you can improve your infrastructure and improve security. You are also going to hear more about the data collected from ICT providers. We're going to have morning sessions only. So today, tomorrow, and on Friday. So 3 days of activities with many interesting talks during the morning. This is the format that we thought would be the most appropriate one for our discussions here. Well, next year, we are going to anticipate our meeting, our forum. It will be in October, 24 to 28 October. Please save the date. Why is that? Next year, there's going to be the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup in December. So we are going to favor the end of October to have our forum next year. So that, let's start our IX Forum. Thank you very much, and have a great day, and enjoy the activities. Thank you very much, Milton, for the opening remarks of our 15th IX Forum, starting our activities this morning. I would like to start by inviting Julio Sirota, our engineering manager, for the first presentation. He's going to tell us what has been done with our IX engineering team and also share with us the next steps and planning for the upcoming year. Julio, welcome.
Olá, pessoal.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be back at the IX Fórum, and I'm going to share with you the update of our IX.br engineering team. Milton has already told you that we are getting to 20 terabits per second in aggregated traffic. One more milestone in the development of this project, which has been spread throughout Brazil. Let me share with you some recent data from 2020 and what we have observed in 2021 as well. In the end of 2020, we had the expectations that in 2021, we would have resumed our pre-pandemic activities. However, we still had the whole year impacted by the COVID pandemic. What we can see in the first screen, here we can see the progression of the traffic peak. In 2021, we had less growth than in 2020. In 2020, the growth had been very significant, but I'm sure you're going to see very interesting characteristics in our data analysis. Let me highlight the continuous growth of Fortaleza. It's a region where there are more and more content providers. So Fortaleza is becoming a very interesting point that has attracted many businesses. Salvador has experienced 4% growth, primarily due to technical and operational issues of the working CDN, which is based there in Salvador. So there might be variations, but some of them are completely out of control. São Paulo, which is our largest IXP, we had a 37% increase. And this is a very significant number to all of us. Concerning the number of participants and the number of ASN, I mean, these are numbers collected up to the end of October. There are 9,000 automated systems allocated in Brazil and over 5,000 connections to IX.br from different locations. In terms of unique IXNs, there are 3,000, about 1/3 of all points directly connected to us. There are also indirect connections of ASNs. Now, speaking of growth and number of participants, I'm sharing with you some figures. Just highlighting Fortaleza, once again, 53% growth over 20. And in São Paulo, there has been a 5% growth due to the fact that in September and October, there were some changes in the way we presented the active participants in São Paulo. To know the status of each participant, considering the high number of ASNs connected, we always need to confirm whether the ASN is still connected. There was a difference of about 100 to 150 names which got away from the list, but we're still checking whether they are part of it or not. Let me share with you a global overview. We started the year with very significant growth. From January to March, every 2 weeks, there was one growth of 1 terabit per second. Getting to our current status, I would say that it's good that we didn't keep the exponential growth, because that would have been a problem in terms of supply of electronic devices, as I'm going to address later. As of March, we realized there was no further exponential growth. We got close to 15 tera, but in a very stable fashion. Number of participants increased, but the traffic had not increased that much. Here we can see the comparison with the main IXP in Europe, Frankfurt, D6, Amsterdam, and London, trying to see how things are behaving there. And we can see that differently from being flat, most of them experienced drop because of European summertime, or even because the pandemic was being better controlled and more on-site activities were resumed. But we really don't know why that was the shape of the curves. But we're still not sure. We don't know whether there is a limitation of growth because of shortage of devices for content providers and also for access providers. It's quite difficult to buy network devices, transceivers. The delivery times are quite long. It ranges from 4 to 12 months from placing an order and finally receiving the devices. Now, concerning the installed capacity, this is a chart that we've been sharing with you in past years. Installed capacity comprises the total capacity of ports provisioned for participants. Which of them are really dedicated to those active participants? In São Paulo, there are 59 terabits per second, 51% increase over 2020, and in Rio, 9.2, 40% growth over 2020. Very significant growth. Another important number is the capacity of optic transportation between the units here in São Paulo. Until the end of this year, we won't be able to expand anything else because no devices will be delivered. So there are 49 tera that had been provisioned. And last year we had 41 terabyte planned, but because of the significant growth from January to March, we had to acquire 8 more terabytes of optic transportation to meet the demand, which was quite heavy. Here we can see the charts with the numbers of connections that we can see. And we can see here the number. Here we have the number of type 6 connections, CIX connections, that we called connections in shared doors. These are connections that get to São Paulo's IXP through companies that sell this kind of transportation services. Since last year, we had experienced some growth, but this year, there has been an increase of about 40 to 50 new connections every single month. And this is what you see in the red curve. 10 giga ports are no longer growing, and it was expected. Here we can see a minor drop. And 100 giga, which used to be the same number as 1 giga doors or ports, now we are getting to 500 provided to participants, showing a trend of additional growth. Now let's talk about technology shifts. For many years, we've been planning to evolve and start using EVPN. In 2021, we haven't progressed very much in the development of these technologies. Manufacturers are still working, but we still cannot have this technology provided through the devices that we have. And we still see no significant advantages in our production. We need some additional development in the technology so that it would be recommended to finally migrate. In the network in São Paulo, we have to start talking about the adoption of 400 giga. Right now, 90% of the ports are available and in our IXP ports, but we have already purchased optical transportation, not delivered yet. Once we receive them, we are going to get to 100% of the ports taken. For technical limitations, there is no, or rather, considering the technology we have available, there would be no way of adding more boxes to our core. We had considered adding more core, and then we would have more boxes in the spine core of the network and expand our capacity. However, due to technical limitations of protocols, we cannot create multiple tunnels and share the traffic among them. The solution is to exchange those boxes with cores that would have more ports. So that would be boxes with 400 giga, so that the growth of the network in São Paulo could be really expanded further in upcoming years. It's okay to really have to update and make changes every 5 years. This is something expected. The boxes we have today were acquired in 2016, so they have completed their utility cycle in São Paulo. Once we can have them replaced, they are probably going to migrate to other locations here in Brazil. Let me tell you about São Paulo's network. There are two cores, NIC NU and NIC.JD, so NIC NU and NIC.JD, fiber optic link with multiple 100 giga interface, ELA4. Between the data centers, where we have our devices, there are 30 interconnected data centers. And the central boxes, we use the data center interconnection solution for the IXP plus optic multiplexing devices using 400 giga per channel of DWDM, and in some few cases in São Paulo, 20 giga per channel as well in some cases. What is the next step then? We are going to have in our core boxes line cards with 200 giga ports and 100 giga ports, 24 of 100 giga and 6 ports of 400 giga per line card. Data centers, we are also planning to have at least the two largest ones to be replaced, and those that are interconnected with the center IXP.
Então, aqui nesse caso, a gente está falando das mesmas line cards do equipamento central e mais placas só com portas de 400 GB, que são 24 de 400. Aí, do ponto de vista de conectividade, a gente vai passar a ter entre os cores múltiplos...
Now, in terms of connectivity, and we are using the 400ZR technology, and here we need to add DWDM transmission capacity because the 400ZR is not powerful enough to interconnect long distance points or even short distance in terms of transmission and amplification on the outflow. So we will have a mix connecting to 100 giga using the DCI as it's using today. And at least through PICs, we are going to have the 400 giga ZR with DWDM, also having 400 giga per channel. There is a possibility of us having a combined solution. So we might not be able to have a direct transition from one technology to the other, but we may continue working with 400ZR with DCI using coherent channels. So we are going to have multiple 400ZR channels at the same time as multiple 400 giga channels. So this is how we are going to work on the evolution. The core equipment have already been bought. And now it depends on the delivery of the equipment. So this is the work we will be doing and probably starting on the first half of next year. So this is very important work for us, and we will need to deal with it. We hope that the whole process is transparent. Now, talking a little bit and very briefly about the other ones, and with the main information, in Rio de Janeiro, we have Eletronet PICs, and we have had an increase In the optical transportation capacity between PICs, we have allocated more pieces of equipment, 100 gigaports, increasing availability, and also the work of clearing the core of the network. So making the core only with P-type boxes just to forward packages and not to meet the needs of participants. So in Fortaleza, we activated Lumen PICs. Also, we have had a process of taking care in cleaning the network core. We have replaced equipment so that we could, so that all of them were with the same manufacturer in Fortaleza, and this increased capacity because Fortaleza has been growing all the time. And in Fortaleza, we have two redundant centers, just as we have in São Paulo. So today we have approximately half of the PICs that are connected, but we're still short a few ones for this activity. So it is very important for us to finish this because we also depend on the availability of fibers. In São Paulo, the process of migrating the core with the boxes, this time it's going to be much easier. It's precisely because we have a redundancy in the core, which makes it possible for us to work in a much safer and faster way in the changes. Porto Alegre, we have also installed new pieces of equipment, and in the core they have all been replaced by newer equipment, and also making it possible to have more availability of ports, or to have more ports available. In Porto Alegre, we're also installing optical transportation with DCI in the most important points there. In Curitiba, we had already planned for 2021 to have an expansion of the equipment, but we had to adapt to a request of the Federal University to change the PICs of the university. So they requested us to no longer be the central PICs and just as works just as an academic PICs where only academic institutions or organizations could be connected. So we started a process of requesting PICs to deviate their routes to another PICs, which will then become the core one. We have started the process, and non-academic participants who are connected to the Federal University will have to migrate the connection to any one of the other PICs. So there is no distinction. You don't have to go to one or the other. So the time that we have to wrap up this activity will be next year. So in the other locations, we have a new PICs in Caxias do Sul, Bitcom. In Manaus, we're going to create a PICs at Bimol, the company that is today hosting the servers. In Boa Vista, we will create a PICs at the prosecutor's office in the state of Roraima. In Salvador, we have Telxius PICs. In Victoria, we had an increase in capacity between Pixis, and in Brasilia, still this year, we have the intention of evolving with a restructuring, increasing optical transportation in preparing for the open CDN before it go live in Brasilia. As to the operational freeze, we consider that keeping PTT activities going on, this is a priority for us. So we don't see the need to have freezing during the World Cup. So it's going to be at business hours, people will be working. It's not really different from watching a streaming at night at home. Now, for events that we regard necessary, being extremely careful is during Black Friday. This year, we had a freezing on Thursday and Friday, and we have the intention of doing it again next year. In terms of origin validation, just presenting the numbers of the evolution, it's interesting for us to look especially at RTKI, and we went from 13,000 to 14,000, and now we have 65,000 RPKI validated. Now, on the route servers, we had the expectation of finalizing the implementation in the beginning of 2021 and making it operational. But this is a new solution. It's very complex. And we decided to look at it, to look at the setting and to do many things. And because of updates and some technical issues and some challenges that we saw during the validation process, it took us longer than we expected. So today, the new version is fully installed in Victoria and Campinas with the black hole functionality active, and also in Boa Vista and Palmas. In every location today, and we have a new version, so we run them every day. They are sent everywhere, and everything is okay for us to start operating in the rest, in the other cities, but we are only going to turn the key in January. There are some people on vacation, people who look after this functionality. And in January, all locations are going to migrate to the new functionality. On Friday, there will be a presentation, and I will also take part, if necessary, to talk about the black hole functionality. In terms of support, we are going to leave a presentation about support this year. Everything was business as usual. And in terms of locations, we have 2 new locations this year, Palmas and Boa Vista. And we are expecting, and there's some work going on for us to complete the last 3 capitals that are still missing, Macapá, Rio Branco, and Porto Velho. So that's all I had to say to you. And then afterwards, if you have any questions, you can ask on the chat or on Friday in Speak to X, and we will be available to answer any questions you may have. Well, thank you very much, Julio. We have some time for 2 very quick comments here, one from Wesley. He was asking, what about the NIC and IX incentive for other locations? So outside São Paulo, which accounts for 80% of traffic today. So could you tell us about this process, please? I'm not sure I really understand the question. In terms of incentive, well, what we always say, the need of SPs being connected to the local PTTs, in addition to others, to complement the acquisition of content. What we try to do, always in the best way possible, is to have content availability to make connection more interesting for participants. I don't know whether that's what you were, Wesley was saying. Well, I believe so. He was saying something, providers today, major providers prefer to be in São Paulo. It depends to the Open CDN project that encourages content providers to be based in other locations, as you said, and you talked about the Open CDN in Brasilia and Manaus and Salvador. So I think that's what they mean. There is another question from Ruben School asking about the requirements of new Pixies in Fortaleza, whether it's required for them to be present in the two centers. So the connection in the two centers is mandatory. In the locations where we work with two centers, in São Paulo, Rio, and Fortaleza, it is mandatory.
Tá bom. Uma última pergunta aqui, rapidinho, do Fabrício.
One last question from Fabrice Dick.
Esse prazo que estão dando
the time
até fevereiro para a mudança
that you're giving until for the change of PIX in Fortaleza, do you think there will be lots of disconnections and cancellations in Curitiba? Well, in principle, well, I don't think so. Well, it was an operational need, it was a request, we are trying and deal with a change. Now, I think that Curitiba PTT is really quite large. It's been going on for many years, although there are no major content providers. So it is an IXP that is quite large for the location. Thank you very much for your presentation. On Friday, we are going to have a longer time for questions on engineering and everything related to IXBR. Now, moving on with our program, I would like to give the floor to João Lucas Brito Macedo. He works in the city administration of Montes Claros. He's a telecommunications engineer, and he will be talking to us about Netbox. It's a network tool, and he will be showing the main functionalities. João, welcome to IXBR.
João, você está em mudo, por favor.
Bom dia. Olá. Olá, pessoal, bom dia. Acho que agora dá para me ver aqui.
Good
já.
morning, everyone. Can everyone see me now?
Então, essa
So,
para começar a falar, tá?
to start
Essa ferramenta aí do NetBox.
talking about this tool that we call
Uma
NetBox,
dificuldade assim que a gente
it's a difficulty
tem, tá?
that we in infrastructure have.
Passei por isso, passo por
And
isso.
I had to deal with this, and I think that everyone finds it difficult to document the infrastructure and to have
para você poder como se diz, né? Você ter o inventário
a system for you to keep an inventory of your pieces of equipment, devices, cables, where they are connected, all IP addresses, so that you know the occupancy of prefixes, lots of details regarding infrastructure. And sometimes we get lost. And we also know that sometimes it is complicated to document the infrastructure in spreadsheets or text documents or a picture that is very static. I found this tool, NetBox, I think it was 2016. It was a friend of mine that recommended it in a NIC event, and I started using it. And it has really changed my everyday work. I don't know if I am sharing my screen to show the presentation, to show everyone. I have a few screens and a few slides just for us to touch or to briefly show what we can do in NetBox and how it can help us in documenting and modeling the infrastructure.
Deixa eu perguntar aqui. Vou colocar essa tela. Agora sim. Então, o NetBox, gente,
NetBox is a tool to document infrastructure or modeling of infrastructure. And it's also used as the source of truth for network automation. For those of you who have contact with automation, you can see that another difficulty, and it's the system really to pull everything from that. So if you were running a script in the device, your code has to be included there. You have to know all IP addresses, all routers in some specific area or some specific rack. It can all be found in NetBox for other automation tools as well. I'll be very superficial in my presentation, but I'm sure you are going to understand that. This is an IPAM, so it's used to document the IP, and you are going to see IP, VLAN, or groups of VLANs that can be LANs that can be used for each area, rack, or site. IP, VLAN, it is also DCIM.
Então você vai cadastrar lá todos os seus dispositivos, os racks, servidores,
rack and servers, routers, everything will be marked in that position.
Fazendo ali daqueles equipamentos.
João, por favor, você consegue colocar em modo de apresentação?
João, can we see presentation mode, full screen, please?
Talvez eu me atrapalhei aqui.
I guess I do. Maybe I've just did something wrong here.
A tela que eu estou compartilhando aqui. Assim? Sim.
Is it better now?
Perfeito, perfeito.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Na verdade, eu vou mudar aqui logo. continuando aí, acho que dá
No,
pra ver.
now carry on. I'm sure you can see the screen now.
Então, seguindo aí, gente, né? Lá no Netbox você também pode documentar lá
The Netbox, you can also document circuit or links, BGP sessions, sections, a number of things, and also passwords. You can store your passwords for each device, virtual machine, etc.
Você vai colocar lá as senhas deles, né? Ou mesmo
And there you can see the passwords, or also use with other systems that you can integrate to make things easier. Now carry on. People tend to ask, especially those who are new in using the tool, it's important to know what Netbox it is not. It's not a system of monitoring, but you can integrate that as a monitoring system, and you can place a link that is going to take you to NMS or to a graph of another system based on some field of the device. It's not a manager of configuration, even though you can integrate, and there are some options of integration with a number of tools. And it's not either a process of inventory, even though you can use it as an inventory system or have it integrated with another one. Here we can see some text for just understanding that. It's important to read and understand before we start using it. Basically, it is a tool that serves to represent real world. IP addresses are associated with interfaces. Each of them may have different interfaces. Minimum details, labels, DIO, etc. There you can see images, sources, you can store everything you have, you can create customized links to access the service or the devices. There is a change login and journaling of everything that is done in the system. All the documentation is there registered, and you know who has made any changes, there are comments, and it's also applicable to a multi-tenant. If you work with data center, there might be different entities to which you provide services, and within the Netbox, it will be able to tell you who each rack, address, etc. belongs to. And it's all focused on getting integrated with automation, with Napalm to check the status of a device, if it has a Napalm support. There is also an API for the code to interact with it and get information from devices. So there is a REST API, Napalm. So here we can see some photos to understand how it works. This is a rack. You can use all the different devices, and this is an example. There are some topology plugins. You can have a live topology of your network based on the devices and elements you are modeling in the Netbox. This is NDMax, and here we have the NAPAM, IPAM of the Netbox. Each prefix can be opened, and you see that in hierarchy, understanding where each prefix comes from, whether it's private or public, how it's being used, how the IP addresses are located, etc. Now let me go into some live screens. Netbox code in the GitHub, open source. This is the version 3.0.11. But the presentation I'm going to show you, it's 2.11. I haven't officially migrated to 3.0. I'm still waiting for compatibility with some additional products. But just for you to have an idea what we can use in Netbox. And here we can see different racks. They have different sets of equipment. We can investigate by rack, routers, modem, server. We can model the electrical portion of the UPS and check the electrical consumption, for example. Let me open a switch to show you. Here we have all the information of the switch. Manufacturer, model, what is the site and the location, which rack. We may include passwords, add pictures. There is a QR code plugin. You may print it and then place it on the rack or on the cable. So let's say for maintenance purposes, the person wants to understand what the equipment is used for and how it works. So with a QR code reader, it will take you directly to the system. Another thing which I particularly like to show is the cable tracking, which is another thing difficult to document because there are a number of details and paths, and it's difficult to represent a cabling structure with few text documents or spreadsheet. So in the Netbox, there is a switch, passwords, information, pictures. If we click on interface, the system will show all interfaces. We can see whether they belong to an LACP group, what's the cable color, what is the label it brings, which VLAN are associated with each of them. And there is a cable tracking here. With the connection of one device to the other for switch and router, it will go through different intermediate boxes as well, DIO, DWDM, depending on the infrastructure. And here in the Netbox, we can have them all represented. We can see all the types of cable, color, size, and it also understands when it goes through intermediate devices, such as DIO here. There are two opt distributors until we get to a different device. This is another example where it goes through a patch panel. So this is the version of 3.0. Here we have some prefix, IPv6, IPv4. We can open each of them and see in details all the IP addresses. Finally, we can see the napalm function. It's a Python library used for automation. It provides an interaction of devices from different manufacturers. This is a router, for example, which I documented here for the presentation. You have passwords, as we've seen, so everything connected, as you can see, and all information sum up here. And you can also click in status. It is a Cisco box, so it's compatible with napalm device, and Netbox then deliver some live information about the device. So here we have the serial number, the uptime, temperature, memory, CPU, and LLDP neighbors. Here we also have a micro tick, clicking status. So this is micro tick. So we see the vendor, model, operating system version, the memory it's taking, use of CPU, etc. And the LLDP neighbors. So showing what is the information that it has obtained and documentation behind it. And here we have an example to get all IP interfaces. This is using the API. So if there is an automation code, you can also obtain the information through the API of the NetBox. These are all the IP addresses of the interface of this micro-tick device. So IPv6, IPv4, etc. Finally, we can see a plugin which I particularly like. As you remodel your structure, it really gives a number of details, how everything is being connected, and you can select the devices that you want to be part of this topology. So I've marked here, and I've used different tags, and you can customize it according to your needs. And we can see different devices connected in network, and everything is very dynamic. As I make any changes of documentation or change the position of cables, devices, naturally everything will show here in the topology. So router, modem. You see, when I use the mouse, we can see the type, the role, IP address, what is connected on both ends of the cable that we are using, and so on and so forth. And you may also customize the icons or the figures. Well, that's it. Just to give you a general overview of the tool, which has really facilitated my daily practice. It's wonderful when you have your infrastructure fully documented in such granular detail, everything readily available. You can use QR code, or you can share with other team, other people. So I believe it has really improved my routine, and it's worth adopting it if you work with data center infrastructure. Having the model documented infrastructure on the tip of your finger, it's really an advantage. So that was my idea when I decided to share this resource of NetBox with all of you. Thank you. Thank you, João. Thank you for your presentation. There are some questions which were sent to you. When tracking cables, Marcelo Henrique asked that, have you documented them manually, or is there any SNMP protocol information capture? Into cable tracking, I don't think it would be possible to do it automatically, because through SNMP or LLDP, in the physical cabling, it goes through different passive intermediate devices, and the protocol won't be able to detect that. So this is all done manually. In NetBox, you have to input the data manually, even though there are some resources, there are some plugins for onboarding of devices that you can have some level of automation. Another possibility would be importing that through codes or through CSV files. But usually it is done more manually. There is another question by Thais Toledo. Is there a translation, or how is it going to be translated? No, there is no translated version yet in the discussion forums that is constantly asked for. Well, but I recommend that you use the plugin of Google Translate in the browser so that it would translate automatically, and that would be a very good solution. It has already been considered in some of the forums, and the key provider does not seem to be interested in translating it. Taking it as a segue, Ricardo is asking about the official channel. Is it Slack or any other tools to join the forum about the netbox? There is a Slack channel. If you type in your search engine, Netbox GitHub, Netbox community, there you can see all links. There are links for discussion groups, the key plugins, and there is one Slack channel. There is a mailing list, a Google Groups. This is the one I participate the most. And there is also a forum which has been used within the GitHub. Jeremy Stratch and all providers are interacting that, but there is an official channel in Slack with Netbox and a different tool. I think it's peer management, but there you can find the link in the GitHub. Last question, we are right on time, and there are a number of questions that we are going to submit to João later to have them answered. But two comments, one by Elaine, asking about the integration with KeePass password, and a second one by Eliseu, asking about permission level for different users. Is it possible to have that? Well, the password, it's a quick answer. Netbox up to version 2.11 has the official version of passwords in the system. They dropped that, and now it's an official plugin. And they recommend that you integrate it with HashiCorp Vault. With KeePass, I do not know how to integrate. Probably yes, because there is an API, personalized links. Probably there is a way of integrating that. Now the second question, what was it? Permission levels for users. Yes. There is the management of users, access of users. You can integrate that with LDAP, Active Direct, or others. And you can also set apart and filter what each user can access. There are some users, which was one of our suppliers, whose login provides only accessing to the devices which belong to the tenant of his company. So you can really customize the passwords and access.
Nice. Thank you, João. Now, I would like to thank João for his participation today. Thank you very much. Your presentation on Netbox was very interesting. We have many questions. Afterwards, we are going to send them to you, João. Well, I am available in the social networks. I like to talk about it, to help. So you can come to me for anything. Well, thank you very much. Now, continuing our agenda, I would like to give the floor to Milton Kaoru to talk about the updates of CIMET and the state of the art at CIMET. Milton, please, the floor is yours.
Milton, pode contar 5 segundos.
Milton, you can count 5 seconds and then start. Good morning, everyone. Now I will talk about CIMET and its update. I'm going to share my screen with you. Can you see my screen? Well, what happens here in terms of CIMET? So, I am going. We can see it. We were seeing it before and now it's gone. Now back. Just a minute. So I'll be talking about CIMET update. This is a project that is quite old. And there's always something new about it. So the topics I will address is the measurement, why and how to measure, the measurement portal, the internet I need, CIMET ASISP, and then highlights and messages. So today, well, we can't do without the internet to navigate for everything. For education. So, what makes us use it for many different technologies and uses for your smartphone, for you to be able to use your Wi-Fi games, to take part in video conferencing and events. So you really need to know what is quality like in order to have good navigation and to use well the technology. So this year, we have reformulated and launched a measurement portal to gather all the information related to measurement. So here there are solutions for consumers, providers, for the public industry. This facilitates communication, and the tools that we have make it possible for us to do that. And there's also an area that analyzes of the data collected. They run analysis of the data and they produce reports. Just as we did with COVID, we have produced several reports considering this scenario and measuring internet quality. Well, there are many measurement agents for mobile devices, for routers and desktops that we call CIMET box. And we have the version that you can download for in Windows operating system or Unix-like systems. And we also have the web tool that makes it possible for you to use any browser to make instantaneous measurements, just accessing the website cimet.com.br. And just to give you an idea, we can receive, in terms of numbers of measurements, practically from all over Brazil, from the more than 5,000 municipalities the country has. Well, out of 500 5,570, we get from 5,455. We don't know whether those cities don't have internet or just if they're not aware of the tool. In terms of autonomous systems, we have 7,525 systems that have run measurements using our tool. So we have single measurements, and this year we haven't yet closed the numbers. So what's new? We have this tool that we call NIC.br, and you can measure your internet. And then there's a tool for you to know how much bandwidth you need to use the several services that you usually use. So you can use the system for the providers of your areas. And so as we run the calculation, this is, we calculate bandwidth, and we have a few parameters for the different types of services, online games, and how much bandwidth you need. And users, as they provide some information, through these answers, we calculate when we present what is the necessary bandwidth to have all the services that they need. So here, and this is the part which I find is the most interesting for you. When you want to see the providers that operate in your region, for example, the user wants to hire a provider. So this tool, Internet que Preciso, can present here the providers that have had measurements in this region. So these are the providers that can be hired by a user. So they can do a research. And then they select an location, and then they can select the provider. And this is the important thing here. For the providers, any provider with any measurement in the region will be listed here. So it's important. We did not want to classify who's better, who's worse. And the important thing here is just to relate and say, have a list of all the providers, because the internet depends on many factors.
Mas acontece que o serviço prestado por cada né?
But the services provided by each and every one depends on other factors, and we did not want to rank them. So this is just to indicate who is operating on a given region. So it's very important. If you are not there, measure it, because then the next day you're going to be listed on this tool. So they present, and in choosing the region, the activities that can be developed with the providers in your region. So you get all measurements of all providers, and all measurements used in that region, and we calculate the average and median, and based on these results, we present the activities that can be performed with the different providers operating in your region. So we are not going to say which one it is, but on average, what you can do with all the measurements collected and they are presented in activities that can be developed with the providers in your region. Here, you can have an idea of download speed. So we can have measurements when more than 100 megabits, and here 23.5% from 30 to 50 megabits per second. So some here. So this is info, overall info that we present. And here, if you have any questions about what we are going to say now, we have the measurements team. So many people asked us to make it available so that it could be installed in a provider's network. So we have here CIMET-MP. And then they're going to have measurement in a provider. So you can install, making a virtual machine available, and we can install the CIMET-MP for you so that we can run the CIMET tests with a server that is inside your network. It can also monitor what we call CIMET-AS, which is responsible for interconnection tests between your network, where CIMET-MP will be, and the traffic exchange points, so that we know what is your network like. These results here are not presented to users, but they can be presented to you through AS portal. So this is info to improve your network.
Para poder, vamos assim, ter esse CIMET-MP, né? E também o CIMET.
So to have the CIMET-MP and AS, first of all, you need to be an autonomous or independent system to be directly or indirectly connected to any location of IX.br. You need to have a virtual machine, KVM, Xen, VMware, whatever. And then for each virtual machine, you need to make available one IPv4 and one IPv6 with internet connectivity. This is important. And then physical resources. So virtual CPU, RAM, network, as described in the manual that we sent. You have a QR code that you can indicate, and then you have all the necessary information. And if you want to install these tools, the team is fully available. And so the message we would like to leave to you is that CIMET family measures help in the mapping of broadband indicators in the country. So we produce several reports, and these reports have served to monitor and still serve to monitor the situation all over Brazil, before COVID or during COVID and now after COVID. Our initiatives have the aim of supporting communities both in terms of applications, data, and measurement instruments for free. We do not bill for that. We have been developing solutions whose target audience are consumer providers and the government. And then we count on the support of the community in the publication or dissemination and use of our initiatives. Just to give you an idea, we count on the press in order to publicize these tools, but it's important for you to know it and to be aware of these tools and also help us to talk about it, because they help not just us to understand what the internet is like and what I need to do to improve it, and as well as it helps that we will be connecting in your network and we will make it available in the portal. So it's important to also count on your collaboration in terms of dissemination and communication of our initiatives. We would like to hear feedback from you. So the team will be available. This is the channel. If you want to send us an email to parceiros@cimet.nic.br. So it's important to have more information, and we're completely available. So this is it. Thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy the tool and help us talk about it. And this tool will also help you to win new customers, because if customers go and use this tool, the internet that I need, internet que preciso, they will be able to see who are the providers operating in the region where they need to contract, and your name will be there too. So this is important. Thank you very much. Great, Milton. Thank you. We have a few comments and a few questions that we want to send to you. Gilbert Davi is asking whether CIMET has any information about any measurements for public schools. Yes, we do. We have a partnership with the Ministry of Education and also with Lemon Foundation to announce, to disseminate it to schools, to help installing in schools. We have more than 40,000 schools with CIMET measurement installed. So we collect all the data, and the data are available through partnerships so that we can map everything, and they show the connectivity of schools. And it's quite an interesting map. And it gathers all the information of the schools, presenting connectivity and the number of schools. With the numbers that the Ministry of Education gives us, and we are working together with Lemon Foundation so that in locations that we are not really sure in terms of geolocation, there are so many schools. The geolocation, sometimes we lack resources to know exactly the number of people. And so we want to go to the locations, and then if we use the GPS to know the exact location. So this is quite interesting data that have been helping us. And it's important. And not all schools are connected to the internet. So this is quite strong for us to have a school not just connected,
está dando subsídios para isso.
And then they're giving subsidies for that. What kind of activity can be done with a broadband that is available at the school? And so, for this reason, there is a movement of giving more band, considering the measurements. So thank you very much, Milton. We have other questions, but unfortunately we have run out of time. And we are sending the questions we received to Milton and his team. Milton has also highlighted that their team will be on a chat available to answer any questions. Thank you very much, Milton, for your presentation. Okay, now continue. We have a 20-minute coffee break, and then we come back with the other themes of the first part of day one. There are many interesting themes, and I'll be waiting for you in 17 minutes at 10 to 11. Thank you very much.
A internet é formada por milhares de organizações e empresas diferentes e independentes. Para que funcione em perfeita harmonia, elas precisam se interligar e colaborar. Há locais com infraestrutura que facilita essa interligação e colaboração de muitas formas. Podemos considerar esses locais como pontos neutros, em que diversas organizações, mesmo concorrentes, estão juntas para interligar sua tecnologia e trocar tráfego, trocar pacotes de dados e internet entre si. Por isso, essas infraestruturas são chamadas de pontos de troca de tráfego, ou Internet Exchange Points em inglês, ou simplesmente PTTs, IX, IXPs ou IX. Os Internet Exchanges são formados por data centers com equipamentos especiais que permitem a interligação simultânea de dezenas ou centenas de organizações. Empresas que fornecem acesso à internet estão interligadas com empresas de streaming de vídeo, com sites de busca, redes sociais, bancos, universidades, órgãos do governo, entre tantas outras. Essa união em um só local de tantas redes com serviços complementares traz diversos benefícios, inclusive a você que está assistindo este vídeo. A internet fica mais veloz, eficiente, resistente a falhas e com custo mais baixo. Sem os Internet Exchanges, as informações, os bits que trafegam pela internet teriam que percorrer caminhos bem mais longos. Isso faria a internet ser lenta, mais suscetível a falhas e cara. Hoje, quem cria e opera aqui no Brasil Internet Exchanges neutros, abertos a todos, confiáveis, sem finalidade de lucro, com profissionalismo, excelência técnica e seriedade, somos nós, do NIC.br. O NIC.br é uma entidade privada e sem fins de lucro. Além de sermos responsáveis pelo registro dos domínios .br, investimos em diversas ações para o desenvolvimento da internet no Brasil. A criação e operação dos PTTs é uma delas. O NIC.br cria e opera PTTs com o único objetivo de tornar a internet melhor para que possa ser acessada por todos os brasileiros. O nome dado a essa iniciativa é IX.br. Ela é responsável por alguns dos maiores Internet Exchanges do mundo e em 2019 completa 15 anos. A operação do IX.br foi iniciada em julho de 2004, após a aprovação do Comitê Gestor da Internet no Brasil, com o nome PTT Metro, iniciativa que uniu todos os PTTs da região metropolitana de São Paulo, o primeiro de 1998 operado pela FAPESP e outros que surgiram em seguida, operados por entidades acadêmicas e privadas. Desde a união dessas iniciativas, o IX.br coleciona conquistas importantes para a internet no país. Em 2019, já operamos mais de 30 PTTs distribuídos nas 5 regiões do país. Alguns são menores, interligando apenas redes locais. Outros são enormes, atraindo redes que operam em diferentes regiões do país e mesmo fora dele. O PTT de São Paulo, por exemplo, é o maior do mundo em número de redes interligadas e o terceiro maior considerando o tráfego de dados. O IX.br mantém boa parte do tráfego da internet do Brasil dentro do próprio país. Os nossos PTTs também viabilizam o estabelecimento e o crescimento de provedores regionais, contribuindo para um ambiente mais competitivo e possibilitando que cada vez mais brasileiros tenham acesso à internet. O NIC.br conta com a colaboração de muitos para criar e operar os PTTs, os quais beneficiam a todos no Brasil. Universidades, redes acadêmicas, empresas e órgãos públicos, data centers privados, provedores de internet e empresas de telecomunicações cedem parte de suas infraestruturas e nos ajudam de diversas formas a tornar o IX.br uma realidade. Há 15 anos, a equipe do IX.br se dedica a trazer cada vez mais e mais benefícios para a internet no Brasil e para todos os brasileiros. Acesse ix.br e acompanhe essa iniciativa.
Oi, pessoal. Bom dia.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome back. We are now going to start the second part of our IXP Forum. We've had a number of interesting talks, and I would like to invite Ricardo Patara, who's going to talk about Internet numbering resources in 2021. Welcome to our IX Forum.
Bom dia, Galvão. Bom dia a todos. Eu agradeço pela
oportunidade. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be here, part of this very important forum of Internet infrastructure. I'm going to share with you data about numbering in 2021, lots of interesting things, and I'm going to share my slides with you. I believe you can all see it. Let me briefly introduce the topic. Internet resource allocation in Brazil. They are made by NIC.br. Allocations are made according to LACNIC policies, confirmed by CGI.br. Policies are defined by the Internet community as well. An Internet community is a widely used topic. What is it? Anyone interested in the topic of Internet governance, Internet provision, anything related to the Internet. It's an open, transparent process. Anyone can join us. Everything is documented and saved for future reference. It's part of discussion lists where all ideas start to show. And there are also public forums. So more consolidated ideas are then discussed in the forums. And we always want to hear about the participants, what's their take on it, whether they just agree with the ideas. I'm not going to go into the details, but once there is a support and a consensus of the Internet community, the idea becomes a policy, and then it's enforced by LACNIC, NIC Mexico, and the organizations that are responsible for allocation the numbers for Internet in Latin America. Now let's go into news. And that's what I'm going to talk about, what happened in recent years. IPv4 is over. Even though it seems to be just a joke, it has a serious purpose behind it. Even though it happened more than 1 year ago, where IPv4 addresses we ran out of them in our region, there are some organizations which still do not know about it, unfortunately, because they are organizations that come to us with real needs that could use an IPv4 address if they were available. However, the time has come. It was in August 19, 2020, more than 1 year ago, when we ran out of IPv4 addresses in the region. To that date, there were some reservations, and they were being distributed just for initial allocations. There were no additional allocation of address. If someone had IPv4 address made by LACNIC, NIC Mexico, or NIC.br, could not receive more IPv4 allocation. That would be just for new incumbents. Those that used to have IPv4 addresses from their upstream providers. But we ran out of it in August last year. Since then, we started refusing any request of IPv4 address, telling them there were no more available addresses. While this special policy was put in place, more than 5.6 million IPv4 addresses were allocated, when just initial allocations of incumbents were allowed. And out of 5.6 million, 4 million alone were here in Brazil, confirming the perception that we had that Brazilian internet has really important role. Brazil, such a large country, has a very untypical situation with many internet providers because of its size. And we see the confirmation in this scenario. Over 80% of addresses allocated at that time were to Brazilian providers. Now, something more recent that has happened concerns, and it's been in place since May 2021. It is validating of security and abuse contact of ASN. We've been sharing announcements with all of you, with all those that have ASN allocation, and they have to validate the safety and abuse contact with the ASN. It was approved by LATNIC according to the process that I mentioned, which needs a validation of contact points. It's to make sure there is a valid operational Gmail address correlated with the abuse contact. Very simple process. Simply click URL, just check the box saying you are aware of the rules, and then it becomes validated. These messages with a request of validation are being submitted to safety and abuse contacts of ASN. It started in May 21, copied also by the administrative contact, because sometimes the email is no longer valid or the person has left the company. So the administrative contact has to be aware there is a pending issue at the ASN. This is done as a routine every 15 days. So every 15 days, admin and abuse contact will get a warning. We have over 85% of the contacts fully validated. That's great news, but we still need to validate 15%. It amounts to 1,300 ASNs. It's a lot. And we have been really intensifying communication. So if you are here with us, you have an ASN, and you haven't been through this process yet, please check your email inbox. If you haven't got it, please contact us. After some time, according to the policy, and the website describes the policy in details, ASN who haven't revalidated their abuse contact may go into recovery. So failure to validate will lead to a cancellation of allocation. So please pay attention. 1,300 haven't revalidated that yet. So please pay attention. If you are one of them, get in contact with us and check what has happened. Another thing which is not that new either, since the end of 2019, we've had RPKI in a delegated model. The certifying entity we use is CRIL by NL Net Labs. In this model of RPKI certification, you can use a repository where encrypted information is kept, part of registration.br with redundancy and high availability. Of course, you can decide which model to be used. And since then, since the end of 19, we have over 1,000 entities with a active RPKI. More than 10%, good volume, but not close to what we would expect considering the number of allocations we have. But the developers of Krill in October make a mention to us. The NIC Labs staff said that we have over 1,000 organizations with a delegated RPKI, pushing over 5,200 ROAs. And here we can see the chart showing the growth. There has been a peak, maybe as a result of some training that motivated people to install it. So you see, just by mentioning it, people have also activated our PKI and NOAs. Now, talking about requests and allocations, this is a chart, and even though you cannot see all the details of the chart, I have highlighted one point in the chart. This is the number of requests received on a monthly basis. Since the end of 1999, there was a natural growth in the number of requests, but let me attract your attention to August last year, immediately before we ran out of IPv4. So in August alone, there were 320 requests, which is a very high volume. The average so far used to be about 180 requests per month. The peak had been the previous year with 250 requests. In 1 month alone, there was a very high volume of requests. People were aware that we were running out of IPv4. Everyone had heard about it. So, aware of it, most of them asked for a requested one. Our average in 2021 amounts to 90 requests per month. So, as you can see, a very important or significant number. 2020 ASN allocations had a very atypical performance. 1,300 ASN allocations. The average in 2021 is of 500 until the end of November. A total of 8,800 ASN allocated in Brazil, which is a very high volume, quite amazing for the region and for the world. IPv6 allocations are very similar to ASN. ASN allocations for IPv4 were followed by an IPv6 block. So we have the same number, over 1,300 allocations of IPv6 in 2020, about 500 now in 2021. 96% of all the holders of ASN already have IPv6 allocated. They have already taken the first step. Still not enough. There are other things to be done, but the first step has been taken, which is to get IPv6 allocation. Now let's go into other points, such as use of IPv6, because in Brazil, And this is a Google chart showing that 46% of the traffic that get to the services use IPv6. There are 149,000 prefixes in the route tables. 20% of the total allocated space in Brazil can be seen. We are far from the optimal number, but it does show growth. And here we have access to our service at NIC.br. In 2019, 3 years ago, used to be 27% of traffic getting to our service through IPv6. Today, they amount to 42%, close to the numbers perceived by Google. There is growth. It used to be greater in the past, and we can see a much more marked growth. But still, we have been observing some increase over the past 3 years. Well, now let's talk about IPv4 allocation. Are we still allocating IPv4? Oh, yes, 127 during the year 2020. This is a number of years where we can see a significant reduction in the number of allocations compared to previous years, exactly when the rule got into effect, when additional allocations were no longer allowed, only new allocations. This is what has caused a decreasing number of allocated addresses. And we can see a reduction because of the new rule.
And in 2021, there was an even sharper reduction, and we are going to see, but we still allocated IPv4 address. And as I said, we ran out. Well, these allocations take place for one reason. We receive blocks that are recovered or returned. There is a recovery process, and I'll talk to you briefly. And in this manner, we can feed this inventory of IPv4 addresses. It doesn't mean we should be hopeful, but we can reallocate these addresses. How can we have access to these blocks? So anyone submitting a request for IPv6, they can say that they also accept IPv4, and they go to a waiting list. It's a single list. So all requests placed at NIC Brazil, like NIC Max, they are listed by order. As IPv4 blocks become available, we give them to those in the waiting list. So there's a quarantine for 60 days to facilitate geolocation, and sometimes it's possible to have blacklists and so on and so forth. So there is a list. So today we have more than 800, and then I'll show you the growth. Since August 2020, when we got the IPv4 requests, they were backlogged and then included in this waiting list because we couldn't meet their needs immediately. So this is just to highlight that today we have more than 800 requests on a waiting list. The other interesting piece of information is that we also have another statistic, and the number of IPv4 addresses that would be necessary to meet the needs of the request in line. So today we need many IPv4 addresses to meet the needs of the waiting list. So I'm going to explain this chart a little bit further ahead. So these lows take place because IPv4 addresses were released in the meantime since August 2019. So these released addresses There were recovered and returned addresses, and after the 40-day quarantine, they were released and given. So in September 2020, 64,000 IPv4 addresses were released. And in February 2021, there were many were released, more than 90,000 addresses were released. In this manner, we met the needs of the waiting list. So there's a lot being released. That's good. And my request is going to be filled. So this is giving you just a true idea of the scenario. So this is the number of addresses being released since 2020 so far, in contrast with the number of IPv4 addresses necessary to meet the needs of the waiting list. So the number that has been released is insignificant related to the number as compared to the waiting list. So those who are on the waiting list, well, the waiting can be quite long in the waiting list. It's difficult for us to recover and return the addresses in order to fill the needs of those in the waiting list. This is a reality shock that is necessary so that we can provide a true prospect of what's going on currently. Well, yes, there are releases and there are significant releases, but in contrast, we still have a very large amount of requests in the waiting list and addresses that would be necessary to meet all those requests. I'm about to end my presentation, and so this is the recovery process and how it's been over the past 3 years. We have recovered more than 53 blocks in 2019, corresponding to 66,048 IPv4 addresses recovered. In 2020, 16 blocks, 21,504 IPv4 addresses put in inventory to then meet the needs of the backlog. So how is the recovery process? The blocks can be recovered due to non-payment of renewals, companies that shut down, go out of market, irregular use of IPv4 addresses. So IPv4 on the whole, they are ASN IPv6 used irregularly. This may lead to their recovery. And it's interesting to highlight that we have mechanisms to conduct the validations and verifications in an automated and periodical way. And this is it. I hope I have met your expectations. I don't know if we have time for questions. I'm a little bit late, but I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here presenting to you. Very nice, Ricardo. Thank you very much. Well, we're just on time, as you said, and we have quite a few questions here. I'm going to try and select a few ones. On validation, Benjamin is saying, is there any place where I can check whether my email has already been validated? Right now, there isn't. So you need to pay attention to your email. If you haven't run the process, if you haven't received an email asking for validation, this is a link. And yes, you should try and get in touch with us so that we can confirm whether it's been validated or not. And if it was not validated, we can check what was the problem and help you. Cool. We have another 2 comments from Benderson and Andre going along the same lines. Galvão, if you allow me to correct myself, I remember now. In our system, we have already implemented a functionality. if the technical contact of the block or ASN, if you get to our IP address management system, you have a domain entity, and if they get to numbering and it's not validated, they will get a report or warning in red when they click to the IP block or ISP allocated to them. Yes, they can check if the ISP has been validated, go to admin system, and go to numbering, click on ASN on the block allocated. If there's nothing there, it's been validated. Otherwise, there will be a warning or a report. So complementing the question by Andre and Venderson, it's about transfers. Is it possible to transfer ASN to a different company and the transfer of blocks between ASNs? Can you briefly talk about this? Yes. Well, transfer has always been possible because we understand that companies have their dynamics, because there are mergers and acquisitions. And then the changes to use the addresses changes because they bought clients, routers, or portfolio, or whatever. This type of transfer that we call purchase and sell of companies is possible, and there's a process. If you bought a provider or a company that had numbering resources, and in this manner you have also acquire the need to use that address, yes, it is possible to transfer. More recently, a different rule has been implemented, suggested by the community, as I mentioned, allow the transfer of IPv4 only when there is no purchase of infrastructure and customer portfolio. So one entity has too many IPv4 that they are not using, they want to transfer the access to a different company. Even though there is not a formal sale, we call this direct transfer. In our website, you can see the instructions on how to do it. And yes, it is possible. And also more recently, even in the country and in the region and outside the region. So I know a company in Europe, they have an excess of IPv4 addresses. They would like to transfer that to me. That is also possible. It's called an inter-year transfer. Very nice, Ricardo. Thank you very much. Just to confirm, we have many questions here, but then unfortunately we have run out of time. And the email of the numbering team is numeração@registro.br. So we are available. Thank you very much. Now we go to our next session.
Pessoal, estamos de volta.
We are back for our next session. I would like to give the floor to Leonardo Melo from CETIC of NIC.br, and we would like to share information with us of ICT providers. Welcome to IX Fórum. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. And I am going to share my screen. Everything is okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to show you the data of ICT providers, and also to thank IX very valuable help in conducting the research. So this is a very nice opportunity for us to talk about the companies that comprise IX. What are the features and everything? And so of internet access companies in Brazil. So this is our institutional part of CETIC, which is a department of NIC.br. We are responsible for producing data on the use and access and internet access on Brazil. We conduct many activities related to data production, and then the design of the questionnaires and indicators, and also training for other organizations on how to produce ICT indicators. And we also have an idea and methodological innovation lab that is very active, and we have extensive production of analysis of the data, measuring and assessing the impact of the internet in many different types of organizations and in society and the Brazilian economy as a whole. I would like to highlight the most recent publications that have been launched last week. For example, ICT Health, with data on the penetration and presence of internet in healthcare organizations in Brazil. We have launched the ICT homes or households. With the pandemic, it was a little bit difficult to run it, but even so, we were able to deliver a result that demonstrates many advances in the results in Brazilian society and other research that we launched during last year. We also monitor public policies, so our data help create policies that seek improvements and the dissemination of the internet. So we also monitor how much the internet is getting to the furthest away places in Brazil, with all the contradictions in the many different locations in the country. So much so that this is related. We try to understand how the internet gets to the end users with the features of the companies that conduct the work. We also have a participation in international definition of internet access indicators. Here, for our conversation, I think that we should highlight the reports of the OECD and CETIC that help to understand and outline the scenario of how the internet arrives, what are the features, and also the challenges, so that more and more people and organizations can be included in a digital environment. On TIC providers, this is the fourth edition of the research about the companies that take internet everywhere in Brazil. So we have a registry from Anatel. So here, I'm going to explain a little bit to you how we plan this research, because this is important for us to understand the results, and it's also important to say that we get in contact with the companies by telephone. There's a questionnaire and also now a web-based questionnaire. The data were collected last year and we launched the research this year. So there's a time for preparation, data collection, and then the drafting of the report, which is available in our website, cetic.br. And that's, it's not difficult to imagine. It was challenging to do it last year. And this is an essential work, and it was possible to connect the companies. And at the same time, we saw a very interesting work in terms of internet access. And I'm going to try and show this a little bit to you. This is a little bit of the scenario that we have Since the survey in 2011, so the growth of STM licenses has been really amazing. So we went from 2,600 more or less to more than 15,000. And in spite of all regulation changes that took place during this time, so we have a scenario that we are estimating to be 12,826 companies. We are getting to the end of the year. This number will be a little bit higher, but I'm talking about active companies, and we offer internet access services. I'm going to say something else and another issue that is important, and I think we are talking to these companies, so I think they are going to understand me well, I'm sure. To compare to other years of the research, our choice of methodology was to work with the companies that declared access along the year of 2020, which is how we managed to have a measurement and to know companies that are active. So we know that declarations of access, sometimes we don't know whether the company is really there or not, but this is how we follow these companies a long time to keep the registry, and we'll be talking about a little bit more than 7,000 companies that have declared access during 2020. But the results I'll be showing here are also offered for the total companies that provide internet access in Brazil, and in our website you can see the two results. Number one, overall features. I think that the main thing here for us to start our conversation, this is a universe comprising micro companies. This is very interesting. It's part of the expansion of companies in many different locations in the country, the operation of micro companies, and it's interesting, up to 300 access declared in Anatel's website. So we're working with very small companies, and it's interesting to see during my presentation how they behave in the many variables and indicators that I am going to suggest for us to talk about. And we have information about major providers, and that's range of 5,000 to 45,000 access. These are companies that are more distributed in terms of size, and we have the small companies between 1,000 and 5,000 accesses.
So lots of micro companies, then small size companies between 1,000 and 5,000, and larger companies greater than 5,000, where size of companies is enlarged. Offered services. I was watching the other talks, and Julio talked about the increasing transportation connections, and we can see that IP and IP transit seem to be more prevalent in smaller companies, and that's the service that is the most frequently offered in addition to internet access. 40% of the companies in the survey said they also have other providers as clients. So it's very much aligned with what we had been talking before and what Julio had talked about, the composition of IX companies. In terms of technology of connection, there has been an increase in optic fiber. 78% of the companies offered optic fiber in 2017. Now the number is up to 91%. Almost all companies have the possibility of providing optic fibers to clients, going for 2,000 companies in 2017 to over 4,000 in 2020. And we know how important optic fiber is to improve internet conditions, especially, as we were saying before, when there is an increase in traffic. There are applications that need more and more of connections, So this is all being supported by the internet provider companies. Here we have type of technology offered by regions. Optic fiber is present in all the country, regardless of the region. Optic fiber is the most broadly offered access, and it really helps us understand more about the quality, because accesses really have to provide a reliable source of access to people. We can compare that to the survey called TIC Empresas, ICT companies. And it emphasizes the online footprint of the companies, including e-commerce. ISPs sell more through the internet than companies at large. It may seem obvious, right? But we can see how companies say they sell through internet. Sometimes it's Skype, chat, or WhatsApp message, which is the #1 sales route, which is also specific in the survey, primarily for small companies. ISP is much more present here, and it also shows, as we discuss about e-commerce, how important it has been to be in direct contact with customers during the pandemic, and it was all mediated thanks to the message app. At the same time, we know that internet provider companies, they have more website, they sell more. They are, let's say, well-structured. And companies tend to be have a strategic position in the net. Now let's talk about the characteristics of companies which are in some IXP. Of the total number of companies that said they had access during 2020, 35% of them are in some kind of IX or IXP. Greater in the South and Southeast, even though there had been growth in other regions as well. Estimated total of in 2017, 1,200, and in 2020, we have more than 442. Maybe these numbers are even higher this year. Now let's go back to access. And even companies that say they have up to 1,000 access, they are micro companies. We say smaller presence of them, but these are companies which are increasingly present, as we can see here. Using the estimates, we can see in the Northeast, there has been a very interesting growth, as well as here in the South. But primarily in the Northeast, and it is closely related with what we were saying about the IX initiative for other capitals of the country. So I think we've managed to gather and to capture that as well. Significant growth among companies that had up between 301 to 1,000 access. So micro and small companies just getting to IX. Main growth between 301 and 1,000 access. This is the difference between micro and small companies. Usually there is a tax issue that differentiates them, but at the same time, it may indicate larger structure of the company. There was one question about difficulties of providers of really joining the initiatives. 53% of the providers which were smaller, they say they are not in IX because they cannot offer the transportation infrastructure. And this is one of the problems that companies face when they want to join IX, which is limited infrastructure. Of course, we could also talk about qualification here, but I think this is the most important issue. Now, getting to the end, IPv6, very similar to what we have with IX, so smaller companies having more difficulty to offer IPv6 connections to clients, and the largest ones have more possibility. Even though we can see a very significant increase. Patara emphasized that it seems that the 44% of companies that deliver IPv6 seem to be the same as those related with the traffic as Patara showed. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but the numbers are converging. And for IX, we see less delivery of providers with less than 300 access, which are the micro companies. There has been an increase in the Northeast region, once again, something that deserves to be highlighted. The number varies somewhat, it's just an approximation, but growth is noteworthy. Here, once again, let's talk about size of companies and access number. And we can see an increase in companies between 300 to 1,000 access, which are the companies that have expanded in IX. As I was saying before, we can observe here when we ask what were the barriers to go into IX, they say capacity building. And NIC.br has a number of actions to enhance the capacity building of these companies so that they can provide better services. This is important to be highlighted. These are ways to try to deal with the challenges in this attempt to constantly improve the quality of internet provided to clients. Well, that's it. Data are available in our website, www.citic.br, where we have detailed analysis of data. Let me thank once again for the opportunity and thank you for your help in the survey. Thank you very much, Leonardo. I have a question to ask you. How hard has it been for you to reach these companies to gather information? Well, there are two main difficulties here. And differently from the survey with companies, which we are carrying out right now, for providers, we have a good list of companies provided by Anatel, so it's easier to find them. However, the main challenge was not due to lockdown restrictions, because providers had to work non-stop. But it was difficult to talk to micro companies because then the owners would do everything. They had no staff. So it was difficult to be able to come up with the right person to talk, which tend to be the owner of the micro company. It was difficult to find time. That was the main difficulty that we have faced. because they had a constant and increased demand. Because we can always deal with registration, some difference in number or name, but it was difficult to get reach of people because they were busy. Thank you, Leonardo. It's always interesting to see data. It's always interesting to see the overview, talking about IPv6, optic fiber. It's just so good to see everything coming into place. Thank you. And now we have our next activity.
Oi, pessoal. Estamos de volta.
Well, we are back. Now carry on with our schedule. I would like to invite Leonardo Almeida from GlobeNet. He's going to talk about RFC, best practice RFC for remote peering. So, Leonardo, welcome to our forum. Thank you very much for the possibility to be part of this event, which is our main event to integrate and provide communication with all the different providers. Let me share my screen with you.
Bom, o objetivo dessa apresentação é a gente fazer uma proposta sobre uma RFC de boas práticas.
I'm going to propose a RFC of best practice for remote peering.
É uma proposta um pouco ousada mesmo.
Maybe it's somewhat bold.
Que falta uma ação mais
in our understanding, there should be a structured action to support providers. I'm Leonardo. I am the leader of IP for GlobeNet. GlobeNet has 26,500 kilometers of underwater optic water network, underwater optic network. We are positioned as the 20th in the CAIDA ranking. And we are already part of 13 internet exchange. And we have to understand that this is the operator that has the main IXP in Fortaleza, where we are bringing a number of content providers to the region, really favoring the development of the region. And the most recent project is Malbec Cable, interacting or bringing together Brazil and Argentina, interconnecting both countries. GlobeNets in Brazil, US, Venezuela, Argentina. Where does our experience come from, and what do we want to talk about remote peering? We sell GNIX, which is a product which takes interconnection to international IX and also IX in Brazil. There are providers in the south trying to get connected to the north and the other way around, and also with other IXP in Frankfurt, New York, Amsterdam. But there is some, let's say, lack of knowledge. So we started working with our clients, teaching them about the best practices, supporting them. But there are other operators also providing the same services. So if we see they provide services, but there is still a shortage of support material, documentation, and preparation of technical teams, we decided to think about a best practice. Because when you have a remote connection, you have to monitor that. You need a technical team. To support the technical teams, the idea is to create an RFC to have it fully documented and structured. It will serve as a guideline for technical team of providers and ASNs to get to the benefits of remote peering. Of course, we have to align expectations. Maybe there will be a point in which the document will become a BCP or some other kind of document to support people, but we have to understand the importance of having a well-structured document in a understandable kind of language so that people can really derive the benefits of having remote peering. What is the main problem we see? Many people try to connect and have a remote peering, and sometimes they are not prepared for it. As a consequence, it may be a problem because you are running the risk of having an impact. So understanding what we are trying to structure as support document, it can be really important because sometimes people get connected and they do not know what to do. But if you have best practices, if you have good support, it's not simply take a jump from the plane and then learn how to open the parachute. You have to take some previous training to know what to do. Our main challenges is that many companies are having bad experience when they connect remotely because the content, or they force the content to come from a remote IX, and that is not the best way. Maybe the content was local and there might be errors in the path of this package and it takes the longer path. Without best practice, the content may take an undesirable path. It increases latency, it impacts service quality. So we want to come up with a best practice guideline to encourage providers to use best practice, obtain content from local IX, and also for remote IX, bringing benefits to the network at large. Remote IX is the final cherry of the cake, but it should be the icing, the cherry of the icing of the cake. But to really benefit from that, you have to consider all the different parts. Sometimes the remote IX will provide a benefit in terms of competition, but should we really set up everything the same? What are the advantages and disadvantages? I'm here speaking to technical people, but there are some people who are not so familiarized with that. Well, it's not only us technicians to do the most and to have the most effective network, but we also have the perspective of a network.
And then the provider, your operator, is here providing traffic to other customers, to other ISPs. And this little star here is the perception of value. And so there's the local provider that buy from you, that you're a local provider, and you buy from a major operator that is related to international contact. You have a perfect chain with service for everyone. And then your customer travels all the way. And what we see is that major operators also have small ISPs. And then the regional ISPs lose their market share because the content is not going to be downloaded straight from the major operator. The other thing is the direct connection to an international IX in order to create a path in which there is an amount that is created, assuring that, yes, there is capacity and equality to provide services, and this favors improvement for the whole chain. So this is all related to strategy in the company. It's not just the technical benefit. So many times for this content to come, you must be a provider of the content. So how can we start this activity? How do we start to work on a structured document in the community. Well, we need to develop, and the right timing, an excellent opportunity, the IX Fórum, because here we have the main technical teams of companies that are operating in the market. And it's interesting, sometimes we are competitors in the commercial environment, but in the technical environment, we have a very good interaction. So the idea here is, and I started talking to some people, first that we should build a work team to prepare a document, and this is going to be matured. So the first thing that I'm going to put here is that whenever we write a text that many people participate, it's important that we will need to give up the way that you brilliantly wrote the text, but maybe someone did it better. And then once you join the team, at some point, even though if this is very nice, it's going to be corrected, because the objective of a documentation like this is to make language as accessible as possible. So anyone willing to help us, which will have IETF, IESG. So we are having an initiative that is top-down. So from the basis that needs the solution, and we are bringing together people that have experiences, we have the experiences, and then we are going to create a document, summarize everything in a document, and this is going to be an RFC proposal. Of course, I need to thank, because sometimes we see these documents in the lobby of events. There's always a leaflet, a booklet, and no one pays very much attention. But this is material that can help. And if you want to start, this is the first material to be based on. And this would be the IETF book. But this is quite objective. So congratulations to Julião, Christian, and Moreira for the initiative of producing this content. And now we want to use it as the basis for our work for the production of this document. So I wanted to be as objective as possible. And thank you very much for your participation. Leonardo, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for the explanations. And we have your email. And if anyone has any questions, they can talk to you. This is a theme that needs to be discussed and molded so that we can move on. Well, just one final thing. The document mustn't be written by one person or another person. It needs to be a collaboration, joint work. So let's move to our next activity.
Pessoal, retomando aqui, ó.
So, coming back here for the next activity in our agenda, I would like to give the floor to Daniel D'Amico from Sage Networks to talk about DDoS attacks through IX and its consequences. Daniel, you're most welcome to the
pessoal.
IX
Bom dia, Galvão. Tudo bom?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Galvão.
Alô, podem me ouvir?
Can you hear me?
Então tá, deixa eu só trocar meu dispositivo de vídeo aqui.
Let me just change my video
Só um
device
instante.
here. Just a minute.
Então tá bom.
Estamos te vendo.
Yes, we
enxerga
can
também?
see you. Can you see me?
Me ouve bem? Me enxerga e me ouve
Can you
bem?
hear me?
Perfeito, pode continuar.
Yes,
Então tá
it's
bom.
great.
Deixa eu
Please go
compartilhar
on.
minha tela com vocês.
So I would like to share my screen with you.
Então,
Okay.
adaptando aqui a plataforma. Então tá bom. Bom
I
dia,
am
pessoal.
adapting to the
Para quem está me
platform. Good
assistindo, eu sou Daniel
morning,
Damito, diretor de
everyone. I
redes
am
da Sage
Daniel
Networks.
Damito. I am the
Só confirma
director
para mim, Galvão, se o
of
compartilhamento da minha tela também
networks
tá ok, tá, né?
of
Vocês
Sage
enxergam legal?
Networks. Can
Então,
you see my
beleza.
screen well?
Então tá bom.
Yes.
Pessoal, eu quero falar hoje para
Okay,
vocês
so
um pouquinho
today
aqui
I
sobre
would like to
ataques
talk
DDoS
to
pelo
you
X
a
e
little
as
bit about
consequências desses ataques, né? O objetivo de eu
DDoS
falar sobre
attacks
esse
through
assunto aqui
IX.
é
And the reason why I am talking about
tem
this
bastante
today
gente que às vezes
is
não
because
acredita
there
que
are
existem ataques DDoS
many
pelo
people
X. Vou
that
mostrar
do not
pouquinho
believe that there are DDoS
disso para
attacks
vocês
through
hoje, tá?
IX.
Antes disso,
And I will
para
be talking to
conceituar
you
pouco,
about this.
eu quero falar
Just
o que são
before I will be
ataques
setting the
DDoS, né?
context and explaining
Então, os
what
ataques
DDoS
DDoS,
attacks
eles, diferentes
are.
de outros tipos de
So
ataques
different
hackers,
from
como
other
ransomware, por
types
exemplo,
of
né, como
attacks,
Deface, eles têm o
as
objetivo de deixar a
Deface,
rede totalmente
they
fora
have
do
the
ar.
objective of
Então, os ataques DDoS, eles são contra empresas, contra provedores de
getting down
internet,
the
indústria,
network
governo,
completely.
e eles não têm o
It
objetivo de roubar uma
crashes.
informação, eles têm o objetivo só de
They
deixar
want
uma
to
rede
steal
inoperante, sem
information.
funcionar, ou
So
deficitária.
they want a network not
E
to
esses
work at
ataques
all
DDoS,
or
eles
to
causam
work very
principalmente
poorly.
três
And these
tipos de
DDoS
efeitos, três
attacks
tipos de
causes
danos, tá?
especially
O
three
primeiro
types
tipo
of
de dano que
damages
esses
or
ataques DDoS
effects. The number one
a
problem that
saturação
they
de
cause
banda dessas
is
empresas.
saturation
Então,
of
os links,
bandwidth
IPs,
of
as
these
conexões
companies.
com
So
X,
IP
com
links,
PNAs,
IX
links internos, eles
connections,
são saturados.
PIs, everything
Você tem uma
gets
capacidade
saturated
normal,
or
né,
overloaded. So if your
consumo
normal
normal de 7
capacity,
gigas, uma
so the
capacidade de 10,
usual
esse
consumption
ataque,
of
ele
7
vai saturar esse
gigas
link,
and
fazendo
the
com que
bandwidth of
opere
10,
no
it will
limite dele dos
saturate
10 gigas, e com isso a rede ela fica
they will make them
degradada, ela
operate
venha
on the
perder
limit of
pacote,
10
né,
giga,
e
and
o
so the
serviço deixa de
network will be
funcionar.
degraded and services will no
Segundo,
longer
o
work.
principal dano causado pelo
The
ataque DDoS é a
second main
saturação de
damage
recursos
caused by the
computacionais
DDoS
da
attacks
rede.
are the saturation
Então,
of
os servidores e
computer
roteadores dessa empresa, vítima do ataque
resources
DDoS,
in the
eles
company.
passam a operar também no
So
limite
they
de
also
capacidade,
operate
né?
on the limit
Entenda-se aí
capacity,
principalmente
and here
roteadores, soft routers
especially
com microchip, eles
routers
são muito
with
afetados
microchip, they are very much
por
affected
esse tipo de ataque DDoS.
by this type of DDoS attack. Number three,
Um dos principais danos que o ataque
one
DDoS
of the
causa,
main
não se fala
damages that a
muito,
DDoS
é o
attack
recurso humano,
causes
tá?
is human
Então, às vezes, a
resources.
equipe da empresa, né,
So
vamos pegar, por
sometimes
exemplo,
the
aqui o provedor,
company staff, for
ela não está
example, one
acostumada
provider
ainda a lidar
is
com uma
not really
quantidade
used to
massiva
dealing with the
de cases
massive
relacionadas a DDoS, às vezes.
quantity of
A
DDoS
equipe de
attacks.
engenharia, a equipe de NOC, nunca passou por uma situação de estresse tão grande.
So they
O
never
ataque DDoS, ele
had
costuma ser o
such
evento mais
significant
traumático na
stress.
vida de um provedor,
Sometimes it's the
principalmente.
most
Então,
traumatic
esses são os três principais
event, and these
efeitos que
are
o
the
ataque
main
DDoS causa numa empresa,
effects
numa
that a
infraestrutura,
DDoS
tá?
attack causes in a company.
Tem vídeo aqui no
So there is a
YouTube,
video
foi uma
here
palestra do Thiago Ayub na GTS,
by
onde ele fala com
Thiago
mais detalhes
Ayub
sobre
in
ataque DDoS.
GTS,
Como
and
meu
he
tempo
talks
hoje
more
é
about
pouquinho mais
DDoS
curto,
attacks.
eu vou ter que dar uma
And as we don't
pincelada
have
rápida,
very
mas
long, I'm
recomendo
going
que
to
vocês
very
assistam esse
briefly
vídeo.
talk to
Ele
you
fala
about this,
sobre
but I
isso,
recommend
tá?
that you should watch this
O que
video, and
nós
he
aqui na
talks
Sage
about
Networks
that.
fazemos? Nós somos
So
uma
here
empresa
at
que,
Sage
além do serviço de
Networks,
redes, também trabalhamos
we
com
are a company
mitigação de ataques
providing
DDoS.
network
E nós
services and
temos
also
três
with the
tipos de
mitigation of
soluções principais para
DDoS
mitigar esses
attacks, and
ataques.
we have three
Nós
types
implementamos
of
sistemas
solutions
de
to
detecção
mitigate.
automática.
So we have automatic detection systems. They detect 24/7 when then there is abnormal traffic on a network. Once they identify the attack, they immediately react to the attack based on configurations. We have our mitigation cloud, one of the best connected clouds in the world, and we also implement local mitigation systems, especially operators and large companies, whenever they want to protect themselves, they hire us to implement the solution for the infrastructure.
Começando a falar aí do tema da palestra propriamente dita.
Now talking about the theme about DDoS IX attacks. So these are some numbers we collected for 6 months from April 21st to October the 21st this year. We recorded 1,195,980 episodes of attacks in our customers. This is an overall number of attacks. And so both from IX in Brazil, IX.br, some private IXs, our PNIs upstreams. So the number of locations from where the attacks came covers a wide range of origins. 5% of those attacks, 597 came from São Paulo, from IX in São Paulo. I'm not even counting Rio or Fortaleza, just in São Paulo. I am mentioning this number because IX, São Paulo IX, is the one that we talk the most about. So there are really attacks, and this is very common. But then I would like to deny a myth that is around. So I got an attack from IX, it's not safe, I'm no longer going to use it, doesn't make any sense. IX is a location where there is exchange of traffic. So if you're no longer in IX because of attacks, well, they're going to come from another origin. You're always vulnerable. The only way to avoid DDoS attacks, if you are on the internet, whether IX, PNI, or regular traffic, you're always vulnerable to these attacks. It's not just because there are attacks in the IX, this doesn't mean that IX is unsafe. So what are the origins of DDoS attacks? And this is really the number one, web scale. So major companies hosting contents like Google and Microsoft, they are top one, the main origin of DDoS attacks. Number two, some carriers, like Claro, for example. So these major carriers. And number three, other ISPs. So according to our statistics, these are the main origins of DDoS attacks that we get.
Quais são as consequências desses ataques?
Which are the consequences of those attacks?
A primeira consequência é
consequence number one,
desses ataques recebidos pelo X, ele é grande,
when the number of attacks on the IX is large from many different origins. Well, number one, if it comes from a single origin in IX, you can just announce with the community not to announce to that ISN, and then you solve it. You're no longer going to get the DDoS attacks. But this is not what usually happens. What usually happens is attacks from multiple different origins, and they are very diversified. And then we need to stop announcing everything to the IX. When we stop announcing to the IX, you're no longer downloading from the IX. This is what they seek, download. Case number two. If the attack is from an IX WAN, it's because of the IP of the IX, and you cannot stop announcing. And then the only thing you can do is to turn off the ATM interface and stop getting traffic. So you stop uploads and downloads. Case number three, and this is also very common, when the ISNs or the origin ISNs of the attacks do not have full routing. Let's get an example. You have /22, it's announced for IX, and then there is a mitigation cloud. This is not going to work if IX participants do not have the routing in their tables. They are not going to attack your routing table because they have their own traffic. It's /22. More specific for IX, they are not going to respect your traffic engineering, your signaling of IGP to stop sending traffic through that way. You need to turn off the IX if you no longer want to get the attack from there. Again, one case when this happens, soft routers that cannot support much routing or other undersized routing that cannot get this because of the table.
que a falta do IX traz para
What are the impacts that the lack of IX provides causes to companies?
Não é uma regra geral, mas
this is not an overall rule, but there's an increase in latency. So sometimes you're seeking contents that were in an IX that was very close to you, and then you need to find a farther away path. And this is a consequence of the lack of IX. The other consequence is the increase in expenses with IP traffic. So because of the DDoS attack, you stopped using those contents that you had in the IX and you started using IX with your IP traffic providers, whether it's confined traffic. Well, there will be an increase in expenses with those providers. So these are the two main impacts that are quite significant for many companies and cause a lot of damage. How can we defend ourselves from that? Well, number one, and the most obvious thing, is to have an external mitigation service. It's also known as clean pipe or mitigation cloud. You need to have these mitigation services before, once you get the DDoS attack, you can deviate your traffic.
Segundo item, você precisa ter uma capacidade de trânsito contratado.
You need to have contracted sufficient IP traffic capacity that is equal or greater than your traffic capacity. That's a typical example. The company has 10 giga of total download consumption, and then they hire exactly 3 traffic for traffic, and the other is transportation to IX. Well, then it's all the capacity is all used. So you need to previously contract with your full capacity with IP traffic. IX is not traffic. We don't put IX traffic in your numbers, in your calculations. You have IX to increase and to improve your connectivity, to have more possibilities, to have better traffic, but it's not traffic. So you cannot change one for the other. So when you have a DDoS, because there is lack of capacity. So it's 7 gig. No. Well, there are companies that offer this. So in the 95 percentile, for you to understand this percentile, there's content on YouTube about that. There is documentation on the internet, and you can send me an email. I can explain that to you. But you can contract this in the modality of the 95 percentile. The other thing you need to do to defend yourself from the DDoS attacks is collect evidence and report to the ASNs of origin. So you suffer the DDoS attack. Number one, you mitigate and you resolve the damages, and then you report to the main origins of the DDoS attack. Well, but they are not going to do that, but you need to do that, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
In addition to that, you have to use IPv6 in the network. In addition to the reasons we already know and all the improvements it brings over IPv4, in the over 1 million attacks I showed you, 0 of them were in IPv6. Doesn't mean that there never is going to be an attack of a DDoS, but IPv6 is still not an interesting attack or target. IPv4 is the predominant internet protocol. IPv6, not yet, so you simply can shut it off and migrate to IPv4. So the main target is IPv4 in times. In a situation of chaos, in which you have to deactivate the ATM of IX, you can disconnect IPv4 and continue to use IPv6. How does CERT.br and IX.br could help us in fighting DDoS attacks, being very strict with ASNs, which are the origin of these attacks. The DDoS attacks happen for two reasons: a new intention and because there are neglecting companies. If there were no companies which were neglectful, which wouldn't care about safety as they do, then we wouldn't have so many problems. And based on what, and I'm saying that CERT.br and IX.br could help us based on the policy of acceptable use of IX.br. Players are responsible for appropriately monitoring the networks 24/7 to make sure that the use of IX.br do not cause or provoke flooding or service denial. NIC.br reserves the right to disconnect all ports involved in malicious activities and or port screening. If you are a company that has never been concerned about reading the security notification, saying, oh, I'll never get affected, I don't care, well, you may be disconnected from IX. You are allowing criminals to really perpetrate their acts just because you neglected your role of complying with best practice and the rules determined by CERT.br, IX.br. So I would like to take the opportunity to ask for help and to ask for more strict protocols on behalf of IX.br. At SAGE, we have ASN, which is the origin of DDoS, and we report to them, and we also copy to CERT.br. These companies start asking evidence, which we cannot provide, of course, absurd requests from their side. They do not respond or they do nothing. And then they repeat the actions, such as Google, Microsoft. They simply perform again the DDoS attacks due to negligence because it does not affect them. So I would like to see a company who get a business report from us, had no actions, did not respond, be punished for it. And I'm sure that all of those who had been a victim of a DDoS attack would like to see it happening.
Como não ser a origem desses ataques DDoS? Como o nosso tempo é curto,
are you not going to be an origin of these attacks? I am coming to the end of my presentation so that we can interact and have comments.
Você pode trabalhar para não ser a origem de ataque DDoS?
How can you avoid being an origin of attacks differently from the companies that to some extent are collaborating?
Primeiro item é monitorar as variações significativas de
monitor significant variations of uploading in the network.
Muita gente tem monitoramento do
most of you have upload, download, monitoring, and warnings when the download gets too low or too high. But I don't see companies seeing warnings of significant upload variation. If the upload is too high or too low, but this is something important. If you have a 5 giga level of upload, then it goes up to 10 and then back to 5. This is an indication of a DDoS attack started from your structure. Apply BCP 38 or end-spoofing filters. This is something that we are all very familiar with. CERT.br, NIC.br have it and have material about that. There are YouTube videos. It's not something difficult, and it does not require much time for setting up, and it can be done by all of you. If you use BCP 38, your network's not going to originate DDoS attacks. Third item. Network services such as DNS and NTP with restrictions of external access, not only login and password, strong password, restriction of access just for reliable networks or the VPN of the company, and also have a restriction of consultation. So good, you have adopted your own DNApps, you're not using A88, but it's not enough. If you are just using next finish, I almost sure that your DNS will be used for perpetrating attacks. So please include external query restrictions, especially those which are DP protocols.
Outro item, manter os serviços e equipamentos de rede
services and equipment of the network constantly updated.
Vou pegar exemplo para vocês muito claro.
Let me give you a clear example which happened in 2016, the virus that affected big devices.
De malware que ele foi resolvido com
this is a kind of malware which was solved just by updating the system. So vulnerabilities with microtick routers, all of them software vulnerabilities that could be solved with update of the software. Well, my network has always been good, my device has been wonderful, so I don't think I have to do anything. Not quite. If it's working okay till today, but you have never made any precautions and you haven't had the origin of the DDoS, I think you've been lucky. Eventually, if you haven't thought about safety, you will have to think about that at some time. I don't know how to do it. Well, there are internet videos, CERT.br, materials, consulting companies. You see, there is no excuse for not doing it.
Tópico, desses daqui que compila quase todos esses.
A topic that brings together all these best practices is manners. If you don't know what manners is, please watch this video. It's a talk by Jim. It's available in the YouTube channel of NIC.br videos. Manners is a set of best practices in safety, and if you comply with them, the organization really checks if you've complied with all requirements, and if such, you become a manners compliance company. It means that you follow safety guidelines.
Uma origem de ataque DDoS,
so you will no longer be an origin of the DDoS attacks.
Colaborar com o tipo de sujeito
you are not going to collaborate with that kind of attack, and at the same time it enhances the reputation of the company. If you are going to sell a dedicated link to a large corporation, for example, maybe you can stop fighting for price and start saying, we are manners compliant. We have been attested by these certifying or organization different from our competitors. So it can be also a commercial benefit, something that should be explored by companies.
Voltando a falar sobre aquelas boas práticas aqui de segurança, para você não ser origem de ataque DDoS,
going back to safety practice, Sage follows all these rules, and we can support you if you want. And these are important issues. And forums such as the ones we are today serve exactly to that. Companies which have never thought about that can have access to the information. All the professionals that we have heard, they have taken years to gather experience, but they prepare 20, 30-minute talks to share with you so that you have the opportunity to learn that very easily without leaving home, especially now, which is being just shown online. Thank you very much. Here you can see my email, the website of the company.
Fazer alguma dúvida, comentário.
If you have questions or comments,
para me perguntar, temos uns minutinhos aqui ainda.
I believe we still have got a couple of minutes before we close. Thank you.
Obrigado, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel.
Obrigado pela apresentação.
Thank you for your presentation.
Deixa eu ver se tem alguma pergunta aqui.
Let's see if there are any questions here from the audience.
Temos comentário aqui do
yes, there is a comment by Harry Godoy.
Muito boa a opção e a ideia de
very good, the idea of disconnect IPv4 and maintain the operation in IPv6. But hasn't the device been impacted with high memory or CPU that would really prevent this from happening? Well,
esse exemplo de abordagem seria no
the
seguinte
example
caso,
of approach is applicable if you are a subject to an attack and it's coming through IX. If you have an alternative path, you can deviate the traffic to mitigating cables such as cloud. We clean the external traffic and just return it back. As you cannot clean the IX or IPv4, if your router is overloaded, you just close it and maintain IPv6. It's not to saturate CPU or have any bottleneck there. If the traffic is deviated to a mitigation cloud, and if it can really mitigate the attack. If it hasn't succeeded, well, it won't work. And this is why you have to deactivate ITM. Henry is one of the guys who talks a lot about IPv6. And if IPv6 has been embraced in Brazil, he is one of the persons responsible for it. Thank you, Daniel. IX Engineering, I would like to tell you that we already report to all participants who have been suffered attacks. We do it with CERT.br. And if they have routers with problems, we report them, and we very closely monitor this process. But thank you, Daniel. Thank you for your presentation. Very good content. Is there any possibility of companies which are origin of the DOS have been notified by us or by you? If they don't comply or if they do not respond to us, can they be subject to any sanctions? I have never seen it happening. Does it exist? And is there a possibility there? Yes, we've already done in some cases for different reasons, not only the DOS, but for different reasons that would impact the good use of IX network. The case you mentioned in São Paulo, there are over 2,000 routers connected. It's bar 20. There is no policy of really having sanctions over those who are really contributing to an appropriate use of the network. It wouldn't be impossible to have that many routers and traffic. So yes, we do it. Our IX engineering team deals with that in extreme cases. We did it. Great. Good. So it serves as a warning for the companies which are not concerned about it. Start paying more attention. Thank you all very much. Have a good afternoon, everyone, and enjoy the talks. Thank you, Daniel. With Daniel's talk, we close our presentations today. I would like to make some highlights with you. First of all, I would like all of you to like our video in the YouTube so that we can have a better ranking of YouTube and share information with others. We've had many talks addressing different topics, and it would be good if you could share that. You are also going to get the QR code of our event. We are going to offer that daily. Today, once we finish day one, you will see the QR code to assess our event. And this is going to provide an opportunity to assess our day, and this is going to be used to see other events. We are going to have IX Fórum 16 in October 2022. It's going to be early because of the World Cup next year in Qatar. We are going to anticipate the infrastructure week as a whole. And the assessment is really helpful. I am part of the program committee with a number of other peers, so it's always great to see that. It's great to hear from you. And based on that, we can bring you the best. So please help us. Another important issue, I would like to invite Moreiras, who's going to tell us about the next activity, which is the use of the Gather Town tool. Moreiras will share his screen and explain how the tool works. From now till 1, the tool will be available. It will happen on the 3 days after the talks. The last day, on Friday, the black holes and other talks will be through the Gather Town tool. Transmission is still here, the webcasting through here, but then the questions can be asked through the platform. Moreiras, would you like to share your screen and explain how the tool works? Yes, let me do it. Thank you. The link to the tool has been sent together with the assessment QR code. So forum.ix.br/IX-Forum15. If we were with us in our virtual trade show during capacity building, I have already done it. So once you get into the URL, you will see the possibility to customize an avatar using your name, and then you get into the platform that you can see here. It just looks like a game, right? We would like to invite you to join us in the platform to interact with us, interact with the speakers, Milton, Julio, Galvão, the whole team will be here. And as Galvão has told you, on Friday, we are going to use it for interact with IX, talk to us, using your camera so that we can interact, asking your questions. Just look like a video game. You can interact with objects by using the X key on your keyboard, and you can see what's there, visitor's guide, I close, and so on and so forth. And as you join us and we get close to them, camera and microphone are open, and that allows for interaction. Lucas is here. He's at the information area, explaining to everyone how it's working. Here we have the networking space, and you can interact with us. So I can see 8 people who have joined us. So we are going to start the YouTube webcasting, because I don't want to see me speaking in the YouTube, because we cannot use everyone's image. So join us. It's very easy to use. It's a game. I'm trying to get away from people so that the camera is not open. So use your camera and microphone, and then we'll be able to talk to us. So Julio is here. Well, Julio, we can talk to Julio. So say hi to everyone, Julio. Waiting for everyone to come and talk about IX, right? Can you hear me? I don't know whether people can hear you or not, but Julio is there. forum.ix.br/IX-Forum15, and you get to the platform, Gather Town, in the room that we have prepared for you to interact with us. That's it. Thank you very much. There are 10 people, and I hope to join us. There are 137 people in the YouTube. Now you can leave YouTube. We are going to stop the streaming. Hope to see you all tomorrow. Now come to the platform and talk to us before you carry on with your day. Thank you. Well, Moreiras, thank you very much. We are going to see now the QR code for people to join us. So you please read the QR code and you are going to get straight to the link of the tool that Moreiras has just shown us. That's it, everyone. Thank you all very much. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for all the speakers who were here with us. I think it was so successful. Interesting topic. And we still have got 2 more days with a lot of content to exchange ideas here. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.